Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and today we're going to look at how women were represented in film in 2016. This has become an annual discussion we have here where we just kind of look at how women were represented in the film stratosphere for the year, from box office to general representation. So we're going to kick it off with Hollywood's bottom line, and that would be the box office. So all of these numbers are domestic box office numbers that we're going to be discussing here today. Because world politics are a whole different issue, so we're keeping it here within the US and Canada. When we look at the top 10 in top earners for 2016, 3 of those films had a female lead. It's sort of kind of 4 really when you count Suicide Squad with Margot Robbie, but there are 3 with solid female leads in Rogue One, Finding Dory, and Zootopia. When we expand our list to look at the entire top 20 box office earners, we get 6 out of 20 that were led by a female character. Expanding further out to the top 50, we have 17 films led by a female character. And then out of the entire top 100, we have 32 films with female leads. So I will admit, especially in comparison to the last couple of years, these numbers aren't alarming. It's not a disaster for the year. And there is some promise there because Finding Dory is the top earner right now for the entire year. And the only movie that really has a shot at knocking it off is going to be Rogue One. So, most likely we're going to have 2 female-led films at the top of the box office chart for 2016. But it looks like it hovers right around 30% no matter how far out we go. 30% of the films have women in the leads. And last I checked, women have a slight advantage in the population scenario here in the US and Canada. So it's not exactly an accurate representation. Where things get really dire though, only 4 directors out of the entire top 100 biggest grossing hits were female. And one of those directors was a co-director with a white male for Kung Fu Panda 3. That number is simply unacceptable. And it blows my mind that only 4 female directors are trusted with even mid-tier movies that get into the top 100 biggest grossers. Even films all about women, squarely aimed at a more female audience, like Bad Moms, like How to Be Single, like Mother's Day, were directed by men. Now notice, I didn't bring up all of the films that had a female in the lead, because honestly, having a female in the lead does not require a female director. However, if you're going to try to capture the female experience and try to capture motherhood, I would think the proper eyes to look at that through would be a female director's eyes. And forget about it right now with women directing movies that have male leads because, that can't happen, can it? I mean, it has happened, but it's a much less frequent scenario. And let's just break down those 32 films that had females in the lead a little bit further to see that although that's a decent number, it's still not really all that encouraging. So 4 of those 32 were animated films. We had Finding Dory, we had Trolls, we had Moana, and we had Zootopia. 3 of those 4 characters weren't even human female characters. They were either animals or a little troll. And as we've seen plenty of times, females have a little bit better of a chance of being a lead when it comes to animated fare, and especially with Disney. 9 of those 32 were horror films, and historically, horror films like to cast young ingenues, young scream queens as they've been dubbed, in the leading roles. And while in some cases, especially more recent horror movies, that can definitely be empowering, historically it hasn't been empowering at all. It's actually shown a sign of weakness. We can't have a male be in that lead because they would take down the killer. We can't have a strong person. We have to have somebody who would be scared, somebody who has to run for their life, has to be saved. Somebody we can objectify sexually, show naked, boobs, yay. And then 3 of those 32 films had a female in the lead but then that lead female character was the only female in sight. She was the only female on the main cast part of the team. And that does include Rogue One, as well as Arrival and Don't Breathe. All movies with pretty strong female characters in that lead, but then everybody surrounding her was still a male character. So really, when you start dissecting it, wasn't really that good a year for women in film either. But the problem just persists that female writers, and especially female directors, are not in the roundtables, they're not in the discussions, and their voices aren't being heard. Women as filmmakers are not being heard. So we're not getting to see their viewpoint. If you watch my diversity in film, women are less represented than the minorities. So right now, it hurts more behind the camera in the positions of power to be a woman than it does to be a minority. In front of the camera, we're still okay. Women are doing a little bit better there. But then let's just look at some of the cultural phenomenons, if you will, that took place this year surrounding some of those female-led properties. Let's start with one we've already discussed a couple of times in this video, Star Wars. There was a huge Star Wars fan backlash as Jyn Erso's campaign really started kicking up. And with the back-to-back Jyn Erso, Rey films coming, fanboys started having a fit. So there was a huge backlash online about the fact that women were taking over Star Wars, that it was becoming a woman's franchise, which is absolutely absurd. Are you kidding me? That was one of the most ridiculous things I had heard on the internet all year long. Again, I want to point out that both Rey and Jyn Erso are pretty much surrounded by men on their teams. They are still kind of the token woman on the team, which in of itself is a big problem. So although they're the lead character, and fanboys, let's not go back in history. Let's not look at throughout the years how women have had to identify with the lead male character in all of their favorite franchises, because that's all there's been. I think that men can perfectly identify with Rey just fine. And if you can't, you have Finn, you have Poe, you have Kylo Ren to identify with instead. But the biggest internet backlash came from Ghostbusters. And Ghostbusters turned into a nasty racial backlash against Leslie Jones as well that just turned completely ugly and disgusting. So it is one thing to be angry that a movie you love, a movie you adore, is getting remade. It's a whole different story to turn that into a misogynistic campaign and attack because they casted 4 females in the lead roles. And it was just disgusting. Like, reading the comments was absolutely vile and disgusting and really showed that sexism is still very much alive and well in this country. And in the case of Leslie Jones, sexism coupled with racism can be one of the ugliest things. But in particular, Ghostbusters received generally positive reviews. I think it was a fine movie. Was it great? No. Was it terrible? No. It was good. It was solid. It was fine. But come Halloween time, it just showed how badly this was needed. So many young girls dressed up like those Ghostbusters. Even young boys were dressed up in the new Ghostbusters costume. So many girls dressing up as Rey this past year. And that's why representation matters. People think that social justice warriors and feminists are just out here trying to get women to take over. No, as I just pointed out, they're still not even at halfway when they make up a little over half of the population. So that's always the common misconception, that we're trying to bust in, we're trying to take over, social justice warriors want to overthrow the white man. No, social justice warriors, as you like to call us, are just trying to get everybody their proper seat at the table. And clearly we have a long way to go when it comes to proper female representation in film. I'm very excited that we are finally getting a Wonder Woman film next year. How has it taken this long for her to get onto the big screen? But we'll see how DC does with that. We'll see the reception to that once it comes out and what the box office numbers look like. But honestly, the 32 total films in the top 100 is almost identical to what we had last year. So no progress has been made there. The 4 directors actually is identical. And as I mentioned, this year, there was a little bit of a caveat there. So, I mean, really, it was like 3.5 actual solo directors. So that is this discussion on women's representation in film for 2016. I know we could go on and on. I know there's so much more to talk about when it comes to representation. But again, this is a conversation that needs to be taking place. We need to continue opening these doors and talking about these things so they become more normalized, so we don't have attacks on women because they were cast in movies like we saw this year. Were they positive signs to you? Were they negative alarms to you? Do you have any other statistics or interesting tidbits that you would like to add to the discussion on women's representation? Please go ahead. Leave those comments and all those topics down below in the comments, or you can hit me up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your continued support. Mwah. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.